nice to be here. I have to say, one of the consistent parts of my career has been money and their support, and I encourage many of you here to bear that in mind as you move forward. There's always a network to support you. This is kind of a fun day, actually, an opportunity for me to do this. It's kind of one of the unspoken sins, I think, of our industry. Do you ever talk seriously about yourself? In examining sort of how I got here and what my career advice would be and opportunities for you and what you could look forward to, I discovered a couple of interesting things. Not prone to self-reflection. I looked back on how I did get here, and it was an interesting journey. I'm putting this up here only because this is me, a version of me. It's probably the person who was invited here to talk to you today. And I put this here because I want to talk about the process of becoming who you will be. Because actually this is me. And, I found this when I was looking, and it was funny. I think the comments are terrible. The marks are terrible. It says things like, I think you're capable of much more, not of that effort, use your time better, is this the best you can do? It was many years later before I found out that I had an attention disorder, and school was just never going to be my thing. But in the era that I grew up, it was the only thing really that mattered. Happily was proclaimed to be average. And as I made my way out of high school, a teacher said this to me: if you're talented and ambitious, there are very few barriers that you can't get over. What was facing me, though, was 4 choices that I wasn't really very excited about. I could be a teacher, I could be a nurse, I could be a secretary, or I could get married. And in my family, and I don't think that it was necessarily representative of all families, but I was born in '65. Things have changed a lot since then. And these were the things that I was trying to struggle to figure out what I wanted to do of those choices. My problem was that these were really my secret aspirations. I was born in the '60s, as I said, raised in the '70s by a mother with a '50s sort of values and state of mind. And I had this conflicted but romantic notion of all the things I wanted to do in the world when I burst out. I started looking at college prospectuses. I couldn't really figure out what was right for me, and one popped up, which was journalism. And I thought, well, that would be interesting. And so I took all of these dreams and aspirations, and I went off to college. When I left college, I looked for my first job. I actually applied for the first job that I could see for a writer in the newspaper of the town that I lived in. I'm Canadian, so I grew up in Toronto. And it was an ad agency. And I started at the reception desk. And in 4 months, they moved me over to the copy department. And in 11 months, I was gone. I couldn't be fast enough. I absolutely hated advertising. And it was a very quiet place. If any of you can imagine that we weren't working on computers, that when I wrote copy, I had to know the character count of the lines that I was going to write, and then I had to walk them over to the print department and have them lay each one of them out letter by letter so that my copy could fit with the images. And it didn't really matter what it was that I thought I was going to be saying. It mattered more how many letters long it was. And I just decided it was time that I left. So maybe I should call this the lost and found years. Through contact at that agency, I was referred to television, CBC television. I went in working in the story room. I actually did wear that suit. There was a moment when the woman who played the elephant wasn't well, and she was a certain size, and they were having trouble finding someone, and I was like, I'll do it. Why not? So I got a elephant suit and did a series, where I was also working on the stories, working on the production, and that was sort of when I learned that if you worked really hard, there was no end to the kinds of things that you could do. I also, then through that, got a job at CBC, which is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, TV programming. And I was pretty good at it. I got promoted. I felt like I was doing the job. But I'm not sure if I loved the job. And I realized I was starting a career in television. And I was still trying to figure out where I fit in. I would watch what other people were doing. I was trying to figure out if I was supposed to emulate that behavior or what the expectations were of me, what kind of job I should do, who I should be at work. And instead I met someone one night and I got a job on tour with the Rolling Stones and I ran away. Which was one of the most interesting years of my life. And I think actually it's paid off in spades later on in my career, particularly when it comes to client service. I did a thing called comfort service, which meant I drove this little golf cart around in the stadiums and I made sure that they had, their towels and their water and their stuff, and that we knew where they were, and then you'd play cards in the green room and you'd make sure that the grapes were green and not red, and read them stories and laugh at their jokes. So I'm not a bad client person now. And I think that that's because of going on tour with the Rolling Stones. But there was a turning point, and eventually I came home. I needed a job, I needed money, I needed an apartment. And I thought, well, maybe I'll go back to the reception desk. I had a friend of mine in the video in the studio, and he was like, sure, come on in. And I was worried, I'm in my mid-20s at this point. Almost my late 20s, I would think. And I'm still not really sure what my passion is. And I don't think you can be good at something until you discover what your passion is and where your talent lies. And then I met this machine. Do any of you know what this is? It's very old, Sony pneumatic tape deck. And when we would edit television, we used to have two of them side by side, and you would slam your great big tapes in, and you could haul them. There were people, I started as one of those people that just hauled tapes upstairs from the basement, and you load them all in, and you move the knobs back and forth to line up a shot where you wanted it to be, and then you think that was where you were going to have your cut. And when you started a story, you had to know your story from beginning to end, because you were going to cut the order. And I don't know how many of you really have had the experience of having to start something and know where you're going to be at the end. Because computers mean you don't have to do that. If you do your documents in Word, you jot down stuff in chunks and you cut and replace it and you move it around and you kind of try and find your story. And that's one of the things that I love about technology is it's sort of more like the real world. Whereas everything that I had learned up until then was know what you're going to say before you pick up your pencil and a clean sheet of paper, and then you write it until you get to the end. And I think that that's a thing that you have to remember as you go out in the world and decide what career you want to start and what you want to do. You don't have to know where you're going when you end up. You can have little chunks and then cut and move them around. So editing, for all those reasons, I think, appealed to me. But it was transformative. All of a sudden, I didn't feel like I had a job. I was in work. I didn't spend my time figuring out what I was going to do tomorrow. I just wished to rush to work every day. I slept there at night. I talked an editor into giving me an internship. And he was the head of the facilities that I was working at. And I said, I'm really excited. And what should I do? And he said, well, report to my office tomorrow. I reported there. He said, report back at the end of the day. I went back in, and there was this amazing, and the story isn't the story I think it's going to be, there's this amazing Pullman bed that would come down out of the wall of his office. And as I walked at the end of the day, it was there, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. Is that for you to sleep on? He said, no, that's for you to sleep on. And I realized that I was going to go around the clock if I wanted to be an intern. I was going to have to ride beside this man, figure out his craft, learn to do what he did, learn to do something my way so that I had a different skill than him. And then when he went home at night, I would log, tape, do all the traffic, do all the organization, sleep there, get up in the morning, and I would have my shot again at the edit suite. Eventually I got promoted from editor to creative director, and they started giving me other people whose work I was supposed to love as much as I loved mine. And at that point, I think, is when I found